And as you may have picked up on last week, we are in a sermon series. It's unlike any that I preached before, and being a pastor for a long time, I preached quite a few, right? But this year we're focusing just on 18 verses, in the very first 18 verses of the Gospel of John. Because one of the things we are desiring is that we would see Jesus as he is in a new and a deeper way. So last week, Nathan talked about Jesus before time. In the beginning was the Word. And the same phraseology harking back to Genesis 1, Jesus the eternal God. Today we're going to talk more about that, but develop that as he talks about he created all things. So before the world, Jesus the creator. Next week, before the dawn, Jesus the light. And then last week, this Jesus is now with us. There's a reason we're doing this, as I said. Maybe I can give a little bit of an analogy. So last weekend, we were in Tacoma with our daughter, Sarah, and her husband. Went there to celebrate Thanksgiving. It was beautiful. Now, I don't know if you know, I didn't know before they moved out there, but Tacoma is actually very close to Mount Rainier. So Tacoma is just south of Seattle a little bit. Mount Rainier is huge. It's over 14,000 feet. It's only about 50 or 60 miles from Tacoma. And despite being 14,000 feet, and really the highest, technically what's called geographically prominent peak in the United States, that means the one that rises the most from its surroundings, in the lower 48 anyway. Despite all that, most days you can't see it. It's there, it's huge, but you might know Seattle area is a little bit famous for being a little bit foggy and unclear and overcast, right? But what I've noticed is even on the clear days, because of the way the geography works with the wind coming off and the storms coming off the ocean, and then this is the first big barrier they meet, it's often, even on clear days, surrounded by clouds. You can't see the mountain, or at least the upper third of it. But there are some days. There are some days when, as the locals put it, the mountain is out. And you see what you couldn't see before. And this is what happened to us on Monday. I didn't take this picture. Mine aren't quite that good. But we did take some because we went on a hike on Monday. Even though we'd been there several days, it's the first day we got to see the mountain. Because all the other days it was obscured by the mist and the cloud. But we went down into an area of Tacoma, and there's some water. And you could see the mountain just kind of looming over it. And Amy said, my eyes were drawn again and again to that. Now, where am I going with this? We don't see Jesus sometimes. Not because he hasn't been revealed to us, but because of all the other things hanging around in the midst of our minds, in the midst of our thoughts. Things all about the Christmas season and tradition, some good, obviously. But we don't often see Jesus. It's not enough to see him as the babe in the manger. That is a true picture, but it is woefully inadequate. It's not even enough to see Jesus on the cross. Not even enough to see Jesus as the resurrected, victorious one. Those are true. But there is an understanding of who Jesus is that goes far beyond these things. And my hope and my goal, Nathan's hope and our goal together, is that through this sermon series we see that a little bit, at least. So would you pray with me as we start to look in here at John verses 1, 2, and 3, but especially John 3. Oh, Lord, that is our goal. But there is no way I can make that happen. I do not have the wisdom, the power, the eloquence, or even the understanding apart from you. And even if I did, our minds are so limited. Many of us are already thinking about lunch today or about the presents or about other things. And that's just who we are as people. Would you grant us the grace to see you as you really are? Would you strip away the clouds and the mist of our other thoughts to see the grandeur of the one who is the Logos of God? And then would you help us respond in our spirit, in our words, in our thoughts to this vision, please? Thank you, Father. Amen. All right, so we are actually going to be focusing on one verse, John 1:3. We're going to look at Colossians 1 kind of as a supplement to this. Last week, Nathan began preaching on, in the beginning was the Word. Now again, this is not written in English. This is written in the Greek language and by the providence of God. And in the Greek language, of course, that word is logos. In the beginning was the logos. And the word, or the logos, was with God, and the word logos was God. Now, Nathan brought this next part out, but I think it's good to repeat it. The word logos has two slightly different meanings depending on the audience. So John, unlike Matthew, who's primarily writing to a Jewish audience, is writing his gospel to those who are Jews or Gentiles who are of Jewish influence, but also to Gentiles. So he's writing to people in the Greek culture. Even though they're under the domain of Rome, Rome basically adopted the culture and language and thoughts of Greece, just like the United States kind of adopted all that from England, our mother country. And so he was writing to people who were influenced by the Jewish thought, but also the Greek thought. And for both of them, that word logos would be significant, but in different ways. So for the Jewish audience, the word would reference God's creative power. Genesis 1, and God said, let there be light. God creates all things by the word, the logos that he brings forth. Words normally describe things that are already there, but occasionally they create things that are not there. So if a man says to a woman, I take you as my married wife, and she says the same, those are creative words in a sense. Now, in a deeper way, when God speaks, it creates reality. It doesn't just reflect reality. That's the idea. So Psalms talks about how he created all things by his words. So God's creative power. It also speaks of God's revelation of himself in a similar way. So the words describe who God is. God shows himself through the word. For the Greek audience, they didn't have this background. For them, this word that John deliberately chose, which may seem odd to us, but he had a plan for doing this, had an entirely different meaning. So Greek philosophers, for many generations, have been thinking about this word, logos, and they viewed it as the blueprint, the inner logic of something, the reason for something, what the essence of something is. So we have studies today, we have studies on sociology. What is the essence of sociology or psychology? The logic of it, how it works, that's the idea. And so they would view the logos as the reason, but also the purpose, the blueprint of this. John takes this word and he blends these together, and he says, in the beginning, that's what Jesus is. He was there with him. He uses this very deliberate word to expand our understanding, enlarge our understanding of who Jesus is. He is not simply a babe who has come for us. He is the eternal Word of God. The way God has created the world and revealed himself is in Jesus. The center point of the universe, its inner logic, its purpose, is found in Jesus, the Logos. And then he goes on to say, through him all things were made. Without him nothing has been made that has been made. Nothing was made that has been made. Now this is an interesting thought, because normally we think of God the Father as the creator, right? Well, a couple of things to keep in mind is that in the Old Testament, the members of the Trinity and the way the Trinity works are not really fully disclosed. There are hints of this, but it's not really developed. It's only in the New Testament that you really see the data that would come to be the doctrine of the Trinity. So when it speaks of God creating in the Old Testament, it's not clear to us anyway what member of the Godhead it's referring to. But secondly, there is an interplay of the forces of the Trinity, the persons of the Trinity, in their creation that we probably can't understand. It's going to be above our pay grade. But just as the Old Testament describes God as a creator, now Jesus is described as the creator of all things that exist. Let's stop here for a second. What we are saying, and let's be crystal clear about this, is that when we talk about Jesus coming to Bethlehem, we're not talking about when Jesus begins. We're not saying he is just a man who represents God, who is a great prophet of God. We are saying The Bible is saying that the one who created all things has stepped into his creation. The one who transcends all the universe has become like us. That is what the incarnation is. Some of you know I used to have an aquarium in my office. All the fish died lately, so it's gone. Which kind of ruins the analogy here a little bit. So I'm going to use this woman. She's got a nice aquarium there. Now, when you have an aquarium, you get to set it up the way you want, right? It's your aquarium. So you go to the store, you buy the materials for it, you buy the fish, you put it in the water, and you create what you want it to be. And there are lots of things in there. There's gravel, there's snails, there's fish, there's plants. And all these things are within this aquarium. And there's differences. Some of them are living, obviously, and even the living ones are different species. But they're all within this aquarium. They're all made out of this stuff. But the person who made the aquarium and who maintains the aquarium is distinct from it. They are outside of this. The incarnation is even greater than the idea that this woman or myself, if I was taking the aquarium, that I would become like one of those fish to live among them. I wouldn't do that, by the way, because it doesn't sound like a very nice kind of existence. But the incarnation goes further than that. Why? Well, because I can go to the store and I can get water out of the tap. I don't create all these things. I put them together. But here we're talking about the one who creates all things out of nothing. And he is the one who has stepped into the creation that he had made. I love this quote from Augustine. It's in your sermon notes. Let me see if I have my sermon notes with me. There they are. Man's maker was made that he, ruler of the stars, might nurse at his mother's breast, that the bread might hunger, the fountain thirst, the light sleep, the way be tired on its journey, that truth might be accused of false witnesses, the teacher beaten with whips, the foundation suspended on wood, that strength might grow weak, that the healer might be wounded, that life might die. We will never, ever come to the understanding, the glory, the wonder, mystery, majesty of the incarnation. There is a paradox to our minds, but as we think about it, it expands our understanding of who Jesus is. Now, Colossians 1, I mentioned before, we're going to come here a little bit. Colossians 1, Paul is writing this, and he builds upon the same thought. He says the Son is the image of the invisible God. And that's one of the things logos, that word represents. It's the representation of who God is. So Amy and I came home on this flight Monday? Yeah, Monday. And, as you go through this flight, this is always a ritual. We never get first class because, wow, those are expensive tickets, right? So you go through this first class section and, you kind of look side-eyed at these people because they got these big seats. And when you're a guy like me who's tall and you've got a little bit of a janky back, you really wish you were in those seats. But anyway, we were fairly close to where that was cut off. And so after the flight began, they put up this sheer curtain to block off the first class from the rest of us plebeians. And so we could look up there. I could see right through because it was sheer. There was this tiny, tiny barrier. But there was a distinction, but there was a far greater barrier distinction, and that's the captain's door, the door to the cockpit. That was solid and it was locked. And I would never know anything about who was piloting this plane unless they revealed it. Was it a male or a female? Old or young? Black or white? Are they European ancestry? Do they have an accent? I don't know anything about this person until he came on the intercom and spoke and said, this is your captain. He gave us his name. Wouldn't have known that before. Says, I've been flying for 33 years. I'm going to retire soon by mandatory retirement age. Okay, now I know his age. I know it's a man by his voice. In other words, the Son reveals things that we would not know about God, just as that captain chose to reveal things I could never know, no matter how smart I was, apart from that self-revelation. The Son is the image of the invisible God. God himself is invisible, but the Son is there as the image. The firstborn over all creation. Now, firstborn can mean two very different things. Well, not very different, but two different, separate things. It can mean the one who is created first, or the one who is over all things. So it can mean temporal, first in time, or first in primacy. So Eve was the first woman in one sense, but when we say the first lady here in our culture, we mean something else, right? We mean the woman who's in the White House, the wife of the president. It's not that she was the first woman ever born, but rather it's her position over. And that's the same way here, because we know he's not the firstborn, the first thing created, because of this next line. For in him all things were created. All things. Things in heaven and on earth. Visible and invisible. Whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities. Like, what in the world's going on there? Those are words that Paul's going to use, those titles, for describing angelic forces. And you can see them again in Ephesians chapter 6. He uses these same terms. Another place he uses them. All these invisible forces that we look up to or fear, because they can describe forces hostile to God, but spiritual forces in the heavenlies or created by God. He is not one of them. He is their creator. All things have been created through him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. Some of your versions say, in him all things consist. It's like the atom that has this strange force we don't fully understand, in which the particles of that piece of the atom are come together within that. In him all things hold together. And he is head of the body, the church. He is the beginning and the firstborn from among the dead, so that in everything he might have the supremacy. Look at these phrases. For in him all things were created. All things were created through him, and all things were created for him. All things in him are held together. This is the wondrous one that we are talking about when we describe this child born of a Jewish peasant teenager. This is Jesus. This is Jesus. This is in the back of your bulletin here. He is the creator of everything from nothing. He is the blueprint, agent, and the goal of creation, and he is supreme over all creation. Before creation itself, Jesus was. Because Jesus was, creation is brought forth. You and I are here. We exist because Jesus determined it, and he created us. All things, including your life and my life, are from him and for him and through him. This is the Jesus that has stepped into creation. Now, what do we do with this? I want to bring out two words of application here. One, remember that Jesus stepped into this creation out of love. Out of love for you and I. Why did Jesus become human? Why did he descend to be like us? It wasn't for glory, he had all that. It wasn't for obedience, he had countless angels already at his command. It wasn't to be worshipped, he was already the jewel of heaven, created things that we know nothing about. We see pictures of him in Isaiah 6 and in Revelation, worshipped by all the hosts of heaven. What he did not have was the free love of those that he loved as well. Soren Kierkegaard tells this beautiful imagery in a parable that he wrote. And he describes a young prince who's heir to the throne of this expansive and glorious and powerful empire. And this young prince, raised up in the palace with all the accoutrements of royalty and all the grandeur that goes along with his position, sees a young peasant woman from his castle window, watches her through several days, sees her interactions from afar, and falls in love with this girl. But there's a problem here. How does he win her hand? Well, he was powerful enough in that kingdom, he could command her to come to the castle and be his wife. He could make a written decree. But you can't force a heart to love you. You can force her body to be there in the castle, but you cannot force the love from her heart. For perhaps he could go in his royal carriage with all his royal robes that he always had with him and always wore, and come up to her door and say, I am the prince and I have adored you from afar. Will you marry me? But of course the problem with that is, would she really love him as he was? Could she ever separate who he was from all the riches and grandeur and beauty of his position? Could anybody? So he chose a third route. He took off his royal garments. He left behind his carriage and his home. He donned the clothes, the tattered clothes of the working class within that village. And he went to live nearby her, to interact with her and work with her occasionally, and to win her love. Now that goes far, far beyond what Jesus did, but it points in the right direction. That Jesus has come to us out of love. There was nothing else he gained. This is his love for you and for I. Now, if that's true, here's the second thing, the last thing I want to bring out. You can rest peacefully in this love. You can rest peacefully in this love because you are loved by the very one who created all things. Or is there anything within this world that can bring you ultimate harm? No. You can rest safely because you have the most powerful one, not only in creation, but beyond creation, who has placed his love upon you. Jesus said, in this world you will have trouble. And that's true. Our son Timothy sometimes gets home before his dad gets off work. So he goes to stay in his house for a little while. But you know what? He's not afraid. Why? Well, because they have an 80-pound pit bull named Bandit who loves that little boy and will tear the face off anyone who would try to hurt him, right? 90 pounds, all right. Now, do we not have much more than a 90-pound pit bull backing us up? I do not say we will not have trouble and hardship. That would be a lie. It would deny my own history, our own history, right? But Jesus says, you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. The promise is not that we will not suffer. The promise is that we will not face ultimate harm because of God's love for us. The promise is not that bad things will not happen to us. The promise is that in all things God works together for our good. We can rest peacefully in this. We don't have to understand. A child of 4 or 3 may not understand what their parents are doing. They may not like what their parents are doing, but they can trust, hopefully, and rest in their parents' love and find peace in their parents' arms, even when they don't understand. And if that's true of a child, how much more true should it be of us, who can understand that we are loved by an eternal, powerful one, the Lord of all creation, the Creator himself, has placed his affection upon us by sheer grace, and has done so even at the cost of coming into our world, humbling himself, Philippians 2, taking the form of a servant, going to the cross, to make our love become real, to take away the penalty for our sins, to restore, so that that relationship could be restored. This is the word for us today. The one who has come for us, this small baby so frail, is also the Lord of all creation, who has set his love upon you. You can rest peacefully in that love. We're going to sing one final carol. About an hour and a half ago, Mike came in and said, hey, can we change the last song? He's like, you're kidding, right? I said, Heart the Herald Angels Sing has such wonderful words. Hail the heaven-born Prince of Peace, describing veiled in flesh the Godhead see. So this is the song that the angels brought forth Let's sing it back with joyful thanks and meaning as we sing this song together. So we're going to sing, Hark the Herald Angels Sing. Please stand.